Don't you dare look at me with those deceitful eyes, you pathetic excuse for a human being. Judge Leonard Kline's voice oozed contempt as Selena Porter calmly held his gaze. His face twisted into a mask of revulsion. You think you can strut into my courtroom in that ridiculous outfit and actually fool someone? I see right through your charade. He slammed his gavel down with a thud, less like a judge keeping order, more like a man swinging a hammer. I formally charge you with theft, Miss Porter. $3,000. His sneer deepened. Just another lowlife from the projects who couldn't resist putting her filthy hands on someone else's hard-earned money. Your Honor, Selena said evenly, her voice cutting through the venom like a scalpel. This process is procedurally unsound. Shut your mouth. Kline bellowed. You don't speak unless I tell you to, criminal. I've been scrubbing trash like you off these streets for 2 decades. Her fingers, polished and precise, tightened ever so slightly around the sleek leather handle of her briefcase. But there was no fear in her eyes, only something sharper. Something that hinted he might have underestimated her. Predators forget sometimes. The apex hunter never announces itself. Kline adjusted his judge's robes like a knight preparing for war, his gaze dripping with misplaced confidence. Since the accused seems to think this courtroom is her stage, I'm taking over this case personally. Her public defender, a timid man barely out of law school, rose hesitantly. Your Honor, I believe. Sit down, counsel, Kline snapped. This one's a no-brainer. When guilt is this blatant, we don't need the song and dance. Dear viewer, before we begin, please write in the comments where you are watching from, and support us with a like and a subscribe. Across the aisle, the prosecutor, a middle-aged woman in a crisp suit, exchanged an awkward glance with the defense. This wasn't standard. Judges don't serve as judge, jury, and prosecutor. Not in real courts. The defendant, Selena Porter, Kline intoned like he was presenting Exhibit A to a crowd of skeptics, is charged with stealing $3,000 from her employer, Pinnacle Financial Services. But this case isn't just about the money. He paused for effect, letting his gaze drift over the jury box, where 12 silent faces awaited their cue. This is about someone who believes the rules don't apply to her. Someone who thinks they can just take what others work hard to earn. Selena remained poised at the defense table, her pen gliding across her legal pad. The gold trim on its edge caught the light as she wrote, every stroke crisp, every letter formed with the discipline of a seasoned legal mind. March 15th, Kline continued. At approximately 12:30 in the afternoon, the defendant was caught on surveillance footage near the office safe during her scheduled lunch hour. He clicked a remote, and a grainy image appeared on the courtroom screen. She claimed she was there for office supplies, he scoffed. But ask yourselves, what kind of office supplies are kept behind a locked door? Selena's phone vibrated quietly. A call from D.C. office, Director Reeves. Without even glancing, she declined and scribbled something in the margin of her notes. Her behavior was off from the moment she arrived that day, Kline said. Coworkers noticed she was anxious, evasive, avoiding eye contact, stepping away from her desk for long stretches. The prosecutor stirred, clearly uneasy. Your Honor, perhaps we should proceed by examining the evidence through witness testimony. I told you this is cut and dry. Kline's voice echoed off the courtroom's oak-paneled walls. The evidence speaks for itself. Only a fool could miss the signs of guilt. Selena's attorney tried again. With all due respect, Your Honor, the defendant is entitled to fair process. Fair process. Kline barked out a laugh. Son, I've been delivering justice since before you were even toilet trained. I know what due process looks like, and it doesn't mean babying crooks. He turned his attention back to the jury, his tone darkening. Let's not forget, this isn't her first time skating on thin ice. Her job record? Spotty. Never holds a position long. Can't build trust. Folks from her kind of neighborhood? Let's just say their relationship with the truth is flexible. A ripple of unease moved through the courtroom. Selena paused for a breath. Her pen halted, then resumed. This time, the note she wrote was longer, more precise. At 12:32 p.m. The footage showed her approaching the secured area. Kline went on. She looked around, checking for eyes on her. Classic sign of a guilty conscience. Her phone buzzed again. A new message from the DOJ Ethics Division. She typed a quick reply, unfazed, and resumed writing. At 12:35, she's seen interacting with something near the safe. Claims it was a cabinet, but the camera shows her hands too close to the lock to be innocent. The defense stood firm. She never had the combination, Your Honor. Doesn't matter, Kline snapped. Thieves don't need permission. That's the whole point of being a thief. Selena's pen moved faster now, but she wasn't taking courtroom notes. She was documenting something else entirely. Judicial misconduct. Violation of Canon 3A4. Appearance of impropriety. And she was just getting started. The missing $3,000 was flagged before the day even ended. And out of everyone in that office, only one person had both the access and the window of time to make it happen. The judge didn't hesitate. She fits the profile to a T, he said, with a smug glance toward the jury. Young, strapped for cash, and from a background where, statistically speaking, lying and stealing aren't exactly rare. At the stenographer's desk, fingers faltered above the keys. Her eyes flicked nervously between the judge and Selena. Even she could feel how far this was veering off course. A murmur passed through the gallery like a cold draft, unsettled, uneasy. Your Honor, Selena's lawyer tried once more, this time with a firmer voice. I have to object. These remarks, this entire framing, is prejudicial. And frankly, prejudiced. Judge Kline's lip curled into a sneer. What's prejudicial is wasting taxpayer dollars on a case this open and shut. The defendant stole money. Period. End of discussion. Selena's phone lit up again. A call from Assistant A.G. Dalton. Urgent. She let it go to voicemail, calmly making another notation in her pad. This one underlined twice. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Just look at her, he scoffed, pointing as if identifying a stain. Wearing that knockoff suit, trying to pass herself off as respectable. But you can't scrub out what's underneath. People like her think they can dress up and fool the world, but I've seen behind the mask too many times. Even the prosecutor stood now, clearing her throat. Your Honor, with respect, perhaps we should proceed with standard testimony. There's nothing left to dissect, Kline snapped. The facts are plain. She stole, she lied, and now she's wasting all our time with this performance. But Selena didn't flinch. Her hand kept moving. Her legal pad now nearly full, each line marked with quotes, timestamps, and precise legal references. She wasn't just taking notes. She was building something. My courtroom, Kline thundered, voice rising. My rules. My verdict. And I say this woman is guilty. The court clerk, 15 years on this bench, couldn't meet anyone's eyes. Her hands lay still, the nausea of injustice twisting in her gut. She'd never seen a proceeding so broken. Selena slowly placed her pen down. Then she looked up. Her eyes locked onto the judge's with a calm, steely gaze. It wasn't defiant. It was something else. Strategic. Measured. And it made him blink. Then she stood. Gracefully. Intentionally. The room went still. Your Honor, she said, her voice smooth but razor-sharp. May I address the court? Kline's eyebrows jumped, fury sparking behind his eyes. You may not. Defendants speak only when I grant permission. Selena didn't sit. She tilted her head, studying him the way one might examine a malfunctioning machine. With all due respect, she said clearly, this hearing is irregular. Deeply irregular. There was a shift. Jurors leaned in. The gallery leaned forward. Under Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 11, Selena continued, a defendant has the right to speak when due process violations are actively occurring. As they are now. Gasps whispered through the courtroom. Her lawyer sat frozen, blinking at her like he'd never seen her before. Kline's face turned crimson. Don't you quote the law to me. Then you should be familiar, Selena said, her voice calm but cutting. with Canon 3A of the Code of Judicial Conduct. It explicitly forbids judges from assuming prosecutorial roles. You've not only crossed that line, you've sprinted past it. The prosecutor's jaw dropped. The defense attorney fumbled with his notes, flipping pages in vain. Her phone buzzed again. A text, DOJ Director Reeves. Status update needed ASAP. Selena didn't even glance twice. She was still focused on the man behind the bench. And let's not forget, she went on, voice rising slightly. Your remarks about my background? My neighborhood? Those violate the Due Process Clause under the 14th Amendment. And every one of your statements is being transcribed by the court reporter for future appellate review. The gavel slammed like a gunshot. I said enough. Selena didn't even flinch. She calmly reached into her briefcase and placed a small recording device on the table. I think transparency is overdue, she said softly. These proceedings need to be reviewed fully by the proper federal authorities. The court clerk's head snapped up. Federal authorities? Selena's lawyer finally found his voice. Miss Porter, perhaps we should. I appreciate your concern, she said gently, but I've studied the system more deeply than you realize. Her eyes never left the judge's. I spent yesterday conducting a remote audit for a federal compliance investigation. That's how I know, without any doubt, that what's happening here isn't just unethical. It's illegal. Judge Kline's complexion had gone from crimson to full-blown purple. Federal compliance? He scoffed. What kind of nonsense are you peddling now? Selena's voice softened, almost casual, like she was chatting over coffee. The kind of nonsense that comes from working with federal colleagues in D.C., who keep a close eye on judicial behavior. Cases like this, she said, glancing around the courtroom, tend to interest them quite a bit. Her phone lit up again. Chief Justice Office, Administrative. She declined the call without missing a beat and jotted a note. Documentation complete. Proceeding as planned. The prosecutor stood, visibly unsettled. Your Honor, maybe it's best if we take a short recess too. There will be no recess. Kline bellowed. This defendant thinks she can hijack my courtroom with a bunch of legal theatrics, but I won't be bullied by some criminal who's watched too many courtroom dramas. Calmly, Selena opened her high-end briefcase, the one that had confused half the courtroom, and pulled out a thick manila folder. Your Honor, she said, placing it on the table with care. I'm formally requesting that all records from today's hearing, including transcripts, audio, and every one of your judicial remarks, be preserved for federal review. Federal review? Kline's voice cracked. For the first time, it didn't land with force. What exactly are you talking about? I'm talking about sunlight, Your Honor. About transparency. About the kind of justice that stands up under scrutiny. Her fingers tapped lightly on the folder. Her manicured nails gleamed, details not lost on the spectators, who were starting to realize she might not be who they thought. Some offices in Washington, she continued, pay very close attention when patterns of judicial misconduct intersect with civil rights. The defense attorney blinked in awe. Ms. Porter, where exactly did you learn all? I've had extensive experience navigating federal courtroom procedure, she said, cutting him off gently. More than most would expect from someone in this particular chair. Her phone buzzed once more. Assistant A.G. Dalton, ready for signal? She didn't respond yet. Instead, she looked straight at Judge Kline, who, for the first time, was showing visible signs of fear. Your Honor, she said, her tone now crystal clear. You haven't reviewed the actual evidence against me. You've relied entirely on assumption, circumstantial claims, and what appears to be a clear bias. The courtroom held its breath. Under Brady v. Maryland, Selena said, I have a constitutional right to access all exculpatory evidence. That includes the chain of custody for the surveillance footage you seem to find so compelling. Silence. Even the stenographer had stopped typing. Selena flipped a page in her notes. That footage? It lacks proper authentication. Under Federal Rule of Evidence 901, it's inadmissible without validation. The timestamp is inconsistent. And there's no record of who accessed or handled the footage between the incident and today. Judge Kline gripped his gavel with trembling hands. You can't just, this is highly irregular. What's irregular? Selena said, her voice finally gaining edge. Is a judge declaring guilt without reviewing evidence. What's unethical is abandoning due process in favor of personal vendetta. She leaned slightly forward, her presence filling the room. But don't worry, she said, tapping the manila folder. Everything today has been carefully preserved. Investigations take time, Your Honor. Patterns don't reveal themselves in a day. But after enough documentation, they always emerge. Kline just stared. Who was this woman? How did she know this much? Selena eased back into her chair, the expensive briefcase by her side, her recording device still quietly running. Shall we proceed with the evidence presentation? She asked calmly. Or would you prefer that recess after all? Later that evening, the door to a modest apartment clicked shut behind Selena. For the first time that day, her shoulders dropped, just a bit. She placed her briefcase on the counter, took off her navy blazer, and let it hang over a chair. Beneath it, a Department of Justice ID badge swung gently on a government-issued lanyard. Selena Marie Porter was not who she appeared to be. She walked into her small kitchen, where 3 burner phones sat charging next to a still-warm professional-grade recorder. With practiced ease, she connected the device to her laptop. Lines of courtroom dialogue spilled onto the screen. The first phone rang. She picked it up without checking the display. Judicial Integrity Unit, she answered. Yes, Director Reeves. Operation Kline concluded earlier today. Her voice was crisp, formal, a far cry from the defendant who stood silent in that courtroom. Better than projected, Selena said. He took the bait entirely. Bias, ethics violations, procedural abuse. We've got it all. Audio and transcript. Excellent, came Reeves's voice. The Attorney General wants a preliminary report by midnight. Are you ready for Phase 2? Selena opened her briefcase again and pulled out a large folder labeled Confidential, Unauthorized Federal Investigation. Inside, photographs, documents, witness interviews, case files dating back 6 months. I'm ready, she said. Today was case number 47. The pattern is impossible to ignore now. She laid everything out on the dining table, like a commander planning the final stage of a war. Photos of defendants, all people of color, all disrespected, all mishandled. Transcripts of slurs muttered in chambers. Secret recordings, all leading back to one man, and perhaps others like him. And Selena Porter wasn't just building a case anymore. She was preparing for reckoning. Statistical breakdowns, charts and ratios, all pointing to one conclusion so blatant it could make a civil rights attorney cry. Selena, Director Reeves's voice came through with an edge of quiet awe. I have to ask, how did it feel, being on the other side of it? Selena didn't answer right away. Her eyes rested on a framed photograph by her desk. Harvard Law, graduation day. Her parents beaming beside her. That hopeful, bright smile captured a different kind of justice than the one she faced today. Beside it hung a Department of Justice plaque. Outstanding Achievement in Civil Rights Prosecution, 2019. Honestly, she said, her voice soft. It felt like every case I've prosecuted, just from the opposite end of the bench. That helplessness, that quiet fury, that's what our victims live with every day in Kline's courtroom. Today reminded me why we do this. She walked into her office. Diplomas from Harvard and Georgetown lined the wall, alongside commendations from the FBI and DOJ Civil Rights Division. A large district map covered one side of the room, riddled with red pins, each one a courthouse linked to complaints about Judge Kline. Together, they formed a perfect ring around the city's most underserved, most vulnerable neighborhoods. The second burner phone buzzed. Assistant A.G. Dalton. Selena, he said without preamble. I just finished watching the courtroom feed. That judge might as well have delivered the federal case himself. That was the plan, Selena replied, already pulling up her encrypted video call. Dalton's face appeared, a mix of grim satisfaction and disbelief. 47 documented cases, he said. Sentencing disparities through the roof. Black defendants getting triple the time for identical charges. Recorded bias. Now we've got visuals of him steamrolling due process like it's optional. Selena nodded, scanning her files. And the best part? He has no idea we've been tracking him for 6 months. Every slur, every overreach, every violation. Logged, cross-referenced, authenticated. She opened a folder marked Tomorrow, Phase 2. Inside were courthouse blueprints, names of the federal marshals involved, and a minute-by-minute timeline for Kline's arrest. Theft charge was fake, she added. Pinnacle Financial's been in on the operation since day one. Their CEOs testifying before Congress about institutional accountability in judicial corruption cases. Dalton leaned forward. I have to say, Selena, going undercover, exposing yourself to that treatment? That's not just commitment. That's sacrifice. Selena glanced at her reflection in the laptop screen. Not the woman in a discount suit sitting in court, but the federal prosecutor who's dismantled nearly 50 cases of injustice, one by one. Justice isn't supposed to feel comfortable, she said. Sometimes you have to let the system rot out loud before anyone's willing to fix it. She closed the laptop and turned to the dining table, where 47 case files waited for their reckoning. Tomorrow, Judge Leonard Kline would discover that the woman he humiliated was the one building the case that would end his career. The next morning, the courtroom doors opened, not gently, but with federal intent. FBI digital forensics specialist Dr. Lena Alvarez entered first, credentials already displayed. 2 more federal agents followed, slipping into the gallery with quiet purpose. The temperature in the room shifted instantly. Judge Kline's face went pale. What is the meaning of this? He barked. I don't recall authorizing any federal witnesses. Selena's once nervous court-appointed attorney rose from his seat. But today, there was steel in his posture. Your Honor, he said clearly. The defense calls Dr. Alvarez to the stand. She's here to speak on the authenticity of the security footage. Objection, the prosecutor shouted, rising, but her voice wavered. The sight of federal agents seated behind her had thrown her off. Dr. Alvarez moved toward the witness stand with the cool precision of someone who testified before real power. Your Honor, she said as she opened her laptop. I was contacted by the DOJ last night for emergency review of potential digital evidence tampering. Judge Kline's gavel hand trembled slightly. The Department of Justice? What does federal oversight have to do with a minor theft trial? At the defense table, Selena sat quietly, but everything about her had changed. Her back was straight, her gaze unwavering. Her note-taking now had the quiet rhythm of a woman in control. Dr. Alvarez brought up a slide. I performed a comprehensive analysis of the video presented yesterday. The findings, she said, are disturbing. The judge leaned forward, lips tight. How so? The footage was altered. The timestamp was digitally manipulated to show the defendant at the secure location during her lunch hour. However, metadata proves the actual footage was captured at 2:47 a.m. on a Sunday, when the building was closed. A hush fell over the courtroom. And more importantly, Dr. Alvarez said, switching slides, the person seen in the footage was digitally inserted. This was not just a timestamp issue. This was deliberate evidence fabrication. The lighting inconsistencies, Dr. Alvarez said, bringing up her final slide, and the degradation patterns in the pixels, clear indicators of post-production manipulation. At the bench, Judge Kline's complexion had shifted from pale to a sickly green. This is highly irregular, he stammered. I question the reliability of this so-called analysis. Selena's phone buzzed again. A message flashed across the screen. FBI Operational Command. Phase 2 authorized. Marshals in position. May proceed. A second federal agent, a stern man in his 50s, stepped forward. He handed the court clerk an official document. She read it, eyes widening, then approached the bench. Your Honor, she said, her voice barely a whisper. This is a federal preservation order. DOJ oversight. Everything said and done in this courtroom is now under review. Dr. Alvarez continued, unfazed. I also reviewed the defendant's whereabouts at the time of the alleged incident. According to DOJ access logs, MS. Porter badged into headquarters in Washington, D.C. at 11:47 a.m. and out at 4:23 p.m., the exact window during which the theft supposedly occurred. Selena's attorney, now standing with quiet assurance, presented a manila folder. Defense Exhibit A, official DOJ building access logs. And Exhibit B, he added, flipping to the next set of documents. Bank records verifying her federal salary, 15 times the amount in question. No motive. No opportunity. Kline gaped. Why would the defendant be at DOJ headquarters? Because you never asked, Selena interrupted, her voice calm, cool, surgical. You assumed guilt based on optics, not evidence. Kline slammed his gavel again, but the echo landed hollow. The defendant will not speak out of turn. Actually, the attorney said, consulting another document, Ms. Porter is well within her rights. She's been operating under a sanctioned federal oversight assignment. Dr. Alvarez brought up one more file. And one more thing, she added. This isn't the first suspicious video. I've found a dozen other cases in this courtroom where digital evidence appears tampered with, every one involving minority defendants. The agents exchanged glances. One spoke quietly into a lapel. Mike Kline's hands now visibly trembled. I don't know what kind of stunt this is, but I won't let my courtroom become a circus. Selena's phone buzzed again. U.S. Attorney General, ready when you are. She looked up slowly. Her gaze locked onto Judge Kline, and for the first time, he backed away. It wasn't defiance in her eyes. It was precision, like a predator that had waited long enough. Your Honor, said Selena's lawyer, now producing yet another sealed document. I should also disclose that I am not, in fact, a public defender. I'm Senior Legal Advisor Caleb Harrington, Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division. The courtroom went dead quiet. Kline looked like he'd seen a ghost. Harrington straightened. I've been embedded in these proceedings as part of an ongoing federal investigation into systemic misconduct within this district's judiciary. Dr. Alvarez closed her laptop. There is no credible evidence linking Ms. Porter to any theft. The charge was fabricated. The footage was falsified. Kline tried to rally, but the words wouldn't come. This court rejects, he stammered. These federal agencies, this interference, it's... Selena rose, not like a defendant, like a federal officer who had never once lost control. She reached into her briefcase, her movements deliberate and measured. Every eye followed her. The air itself seemed to pause. Your Honor, she said, her voice echoing through the silence. Before you further implicate yourself in obstruction or conspiracy, there's something you, in this courtroom, need to know. The marshals stepped forward, hands drifting toward their belts. Selena pulled out a leather badge wallet and opened it, its golden seal glinting under the courtroom lights. Judge Kline flinched. My name is Selena Marie Porter, she said, standing tall. Senior Federal Prosecutor. U.S. Department of Justice. Civil Rights Division. Gasps swept the courtroom, and the gavel slipped from Kline's hand. Her voice cuts through the courtroom like a bell. Clear, resonant, impossible to ignore. In Your Honor, Selena declares, you are officially under federal investigation. The room detonates with gasps. The sound bounces off the oak-paneled walls like thunder. Jurors lean forward, straining to see. The stenographer freezes mid-keystroke. And Judge Kline, his mouth opens and closes uselessly, like a man choking on the truth. You're what? Selena steps forward, not as a defendant now, but as a seasoned federal prosecutor presenting the most satisfying case of her career. For the past 6 months, she says, unfolding a thick manila folder across the defense table, I've been conducting a covert investigation into your pattern of judicial misconduct, civil rights violations, and systemic abuse of power. She fans out documents, court transcripts, internal memos, sealed affidavits, all damning. There was no theft. Pinnacle Financial has been cooperating with the federal government from the beginning. This wasn't a trial. It was a trap. Kline's fingers claw at the bench. His knuckles are bone white. This can't be happening. You can't. Federal prosecutors don't go undercover like this. Selena's smile is surgical. They do when judges forget they're not above the law. Behind the bench, the marshals close in, silent but ready. Every word you uttered, every prejudiced ruling, every off-the-record comment. It's all been recorded, documented, and prepared for prosecution. Her voice grows steadier, stronger. The courtroom isn't just listening, they're witnessing. Did you really think you could abuse your position forever and no one would notice? Kline attempts to slam his gavel, but his hands are trembling too violently. This is entrapment, he cries. This is illegal. What's illegal? Selena fires back. Is a federal judge weaponizing the courtroom to target people based on the color of their skin? What's illegal is denying civil rights and calling it justice. She swipes on a tablet, casting a video to the courtroom screen. Clip after clip plays, 47 different cases. Kline presiding. Kline mocking. Kline sentencing black and brown defendants with visible disdain and harsher punishments. 47 cases, Your Honor. 47 moments where your gavel became a tool of oppression. Gasps ripple again. The clips are undeniable. The racism, the cruelty, the blatant disregard for law. Kline's face has drained to a ghastly gray. His breathing is uneven. Rapid. You tricked me. This isn't fair. Selena's laugh is frost. Fair? You've spent 2 decades denying fairness to people who had no voice. Today, one of them spoke back. A federal marshal steps forward. Judge Leonard Kline, he says, voice resolute. By order of the Department of Justice, you are removed from this bench, pending criminal charges for judicial misconduct and civil rights violations. Selena steps closer. You once said you could spot a criminal across the courtroom, she says. You were right. You just never looked in the mirror. The marshals flank Kline. He doesn't fight. Can't. His reign is over. Justice doesn't discriminate, Selena says, her final words echoing through the chamber. But you did. And now, you'll answer for every single one of those choices. Kline slumps in his seat. The weight of 20 years of corruption, finally too heavy to bear. Selena moves behind the prosecution's table with the effortless grace of someone who's argued in the highest courts. Kline, now in the defendant's seat, looks smaller than ever, his once imposing robes now wrinkled, empty. Mr. Kline, Selena begins, voice cold and judicial. You are no longer entitled to the title of Your Honor. That title is earned. The newly appointed acting federal judge offers a firm nod. The message is clear. Justice has reclaimed its house. Selena walks to the evidence table, where 47 case files sit in pristine order. She lifts one. Mr. Kline, do you recognize this defendant? She holds up a photo of Elena Cruz, a young Latina woman sentenced under his hand. I see many defendants, he mutters. Elena Cruz, Selena says, was charged with shoplifting $12 worth of items. You gave her 60 days in jail and fined her $1,000. The standard sentence? Community service. She doesn't wait for him to answer. Darius Coleman, first-time marijuana possession. You gave him 6 months. State guidelines suggest probation. Another file. Nadia Herrera, driving with an expired license. You revoked her only vehicle, cutting off her income and ability to support 3 children. She steps closer, towering now. The pattern, Selena says, was never hidden. You just thought no one would ever hold you accountable. But now, the courtroom is watching. And Selena Marie Porter, senior federal prosecutor, has just flipped the script. Kline tries to cling to a shred of dignity. I exercise judicial discretion, he insists. Selena chuckles, the sound colder than ice. Discretion, Mr. Kline? she replies, stepping forward. Let's unpack that. She activates the courtroom's display screen, revealing a statistical report that causes several federal officials to lean in with interest. This data covers your sentencing trends over the last 5 years, she explains. It shows Black defendants in your courtroom received sentences more than 3 times longer than white defendants for the same offenses. Hispanic defendants? Their sentences were 247% longer. The courtroom stiffens. The numbers land like punches. Investigators rapidly take notes. Selena opens a thick folder. These, she says, are transcripts of your conversations in chambers. Would you prefer I read them aloud? Kline's face drains of all color. Those were private. Private conversations, Selena cuts in, her voice rising with fierce conviction, where you referred to Black defendants as animals and called Hispanic defendants illegals, regardless of their citizenship. You joked about cleaning up neighborhoods by locking up minorities. She moves toward the bench. Your Honor, I submit Federal Exhibit 27A, audio recordings legally obtained through court-authorized surveillance. Kline's voice trembles. You recorded me? We recorded a sitting federal judge committing civil rights violations, Selena replies, her smile sharp. Just as you recorded your own confession yesterday, when you stripped away any pretense of fairness to prosecute me based solely on race. She lifts another file. Mr. Kline, are you aware of the case, Thomas Jefferson High School versus Board of Education? What does that have to do with this? You dismissed a plea from 63 minority students asking for fair legal representation, called it frivolous, without reading a single brief. Selena's voice rises to a crescendo. These children were being denied educational opportunities. Your refusal sealed their fate to a life of inequity. And why? Because you couldn't be bothered to show them the dignity they deserved. Kline slouches further, retreating behind the bench like it might shield him. I made lawful judicial decisions, he mumbles. You made racially motivated decisions rooted in bias. Selena fires back. You turned that bench into a weapon. She gestures to the table, now covered in 47 case files arranged with surgical precision. 47 lives shattered by your prejudice. 47 families who walked into your courtroom seeking justice and were met with contempt. Then, her voice drops, quiet, steady, piercing. These people were innocent until proven guilty. But in your courtroom, Mr. Kline, they were guilty until proven white. The federal marshals shift forward. Mr. Kline, Selena says, her voice unwavering. You took an oath to uphold justice impartially, but you twisted that oath into a license for racial persecution. Today, justice is catching up with you. The presiding federal judge calls the court to order as Selena steps confidently into her rightful position, no longer a supposed defendant, but the voice of the United States government itself. Marshals line the walls now. This is no longer his court. The United States of America versus Leonard Arthur Kline, the federal judge declares. His voice is heavy with justice. The defendant is charged under Title 18, Section 242, for federal civil rights violations. Selena rises with the grace and command of a veteran federal prosecutor. Your Honor, we will show that Mr. Kline knowingly and repeatedly violated the constitutional rights of citizens under color of law, an offense punishable by life in federal prison. Kline sits in stunned silence, slumped in a defendant's chair, his tailored suit crumpled and irrelevant. The man who ruled from the bench yesterday now faces its wrath. Mr. Kline, Selena begins, her voice representing every silenced voice he ever ignored. You spent 2 decades twisting justice into a tool of racial oppression. She walks to the evidence table and lays her hand on the files. Each one a life, a story, a scar. Elena Cruz was jailed over a $12 theft. She couldn't afford bail or the fine. Her family spiraled into poverty. Darius Coleman got 6 months for marijuana possession because you wanted to send a message. He lost his home, his future. Nadia Herrera's car was confiscated for a simple expired license. She couldn't get to work, and her diabetic son missed vital appointments. He ended up in the hospital. Then she looks directly at Kline. Every one of those cases wasn't just a statistic. It was a family shattered, a future stolen, a basic right crushed under the weight of your prejudice. As Selena speaks, federal investigators unveil even more damning evidence. Financial documents linking Kline to private prison contracts, audio of him boasting about his incarceration numbers at judicial conferences, and data analysis confirming a clear, deliberate pattern of bias. These actions, Selena declares, her tone steady and powerful, constitute a conspiracy to violate the rights of American citizens under federal law. He used his position not to uphold justice, but to erode it, violating equal protection, due process, and the promise of fairness enshrined in the 14th Amendment. Chief Federal Judge Helen Harrington, appointed specifically to oversee judicial corruption cases, examines the evidence with a rigor Kline never granted those who stood before him. Then Selena delivers the final blow. Yesterday's court proceedings alone are proof of his utter contempt for constitutional values. He didn't just abandon neutrality. He actively prosecuted someone from the bench, driven by personal and racial prejudice. Selena's voice swells in the chamber. Mr. Kline didn't just violate his oath. He turned it into a weapon against those the Constitution exists to protect. The federal prosecutor seated beside her continues. Your Honor, the United States brings additional charges: conspiracy to violate civil rights, obstruction of justice, and abuse of power under color of law. Mr. Kline's actions have attacked the very foundation of our justice system. Judge Harrington turns to the disgraced former judge. Mr. Kline, you are found guilty on all federal counts. This court sentences you to 15 years in federal prison, without parole. Kline's composure crumbles. His shoulders tremble beneath the weight of accountability. Please, I have a family. I made mistakes. Selena's voice cuts in, cold and unwavering. Every person you sentenced harshly had a family too, Mr. Kline. You showed them no mercy. And now, federal law shows you the justice they were denied. The judge continues. Additionally, all cases heard in Mr. Kline's courtroom over the past 5 years will undergo mandatory federal review. Any ruling tainted by bias will be overturned. Selena rises for the final announcement. Today, 127 wrongful convictions are being vacated. That's 127 lives given a second chance because federal justice doesn't discriminate. The room erupts. Families weep openly, realizing the nightmare they endured is finally ending. Justice is real. It has arrived. Judge Harrington delivers one more blow. Mr. Kline's pension and benefits are revoked. His assets will be liquidated to compensate the people he harmed. As federal marshals close in, Selena approaches one last time. You always claimed you could spot a criminal, Mr. Kline, she says softly. Turns out, you were just looking in the wrong direction. It was you all along. With handcuffs snapping shut around his wrists, Kline is escorted out, no longer a judge, but a convict. Selena addresses the court one final time. This investigation exposed widespread corruption requiring ongoing federal oversight. The DOJ recommends permanent monitoring of this district to protect constitutional rights. Kline is let out in chains. Selena stands tall, not just for herself, but for everyone who had been silenced. The Constitution has spoken, and justice has answered. The gavel falls. Real justice, at last. 6 months later, Kline's once regal robes have been traded for a prison-issued jumpsuit. His gavel is now a plastic spoon. Stripped of power, of prestige, of legacy, he waits in line for meals, just another inmate in a federal facility. Meanwhile, Selena Marie Porter stands before Congress, her federal prosecutor's badge catching the light beneath the Capitol dome. Senators, representatives, she begins. I stand here today to report that a 20-year network of judicial corruption has been dismantled. Thousands of Americans were denied their constitutional rights. No more. The transformation is complete. The woman who walked into court pretending to be powerless has become the emblem of reform. Law schools now teach her undercover operation as a gold standard in legal investigation. 127 wrongful convictions overturned. Selena continues, her voice echoing through the chamber. Families once torn apart by injustice are being reunited. Justice once denied has now been delivered. In courtrooms across the region, new oversight protocols ensure every sentence is reviewed, every ruling is scrutinized. Federal observers monitor from the gallery, making sure the phrase "equal justice under law" means exactly what it says. Selena's promotion to Director of Federal Judicial Integrity isn't just a personal achievement, it's a national milestone. At the Selena Porter Foundation for Legal Justice, young students from marginalized backgrounds are given the resources to become the next generation of civil rights champions. And every week, Selena teaches a seminar titled, "When the System Fails, Federal Solutions to Local Corruption." Remember, Selena tells her students, her voice holding that quiet command she once used to unmask a corrupt judge. Justice isn't something you wait for. It demands action, courage, and sometimes real sacrifice. But when you stand up for what's right, you are never alone. Take Elena Cruz now. Her wrongful conviction vacated, her life rebuilt with federal support. She's working as a paralegal, helping people her former fate could have destroyed. Darius Coleman? He earned his law degree on a foundation scholarship, ready to become the civil rights attorney his neighborhood has needed for years. Nadia Herrera owns her own business today. The record that once defined her future? It's gone, erased by federal justice. Their stories were once buried under layers of judicial bias. Now they're beacons. They light the way for a new generation of legal advocates who know the Constitution's promise of equal justice under law isn't just a phrase, it's a duty. Framed in Selena's DOJ office, the final summary of her case reads, Operation Kline, 47 documented violations, 127 convictions overturned, 1 corrupt judge imprisoned, 1 judicial district transformed, countless lives restored. But Selena knows the real victory doesn't live in the numbers. It lives in the faith rekindled. Faith that justice can prevail when brave people refuse to accept tyranny as inevitable. Because in every badge, every oath, every moment of power, there is responsibility, not just to enforce the law, but to protect rights, to stand by dignity, and to ensure that justice does not become injustice. Thank you for watching. Subscribe me and hit the notification bell to not miss new stories. Bye.